rundown on some of the paints that I use or I have. Big idea here is to part all the knowledge I have, and we have a lot of other experts here. So there's a lot of people that know a lot about paint here. And when I'm out on the internet or talking to people, there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings on the different paints. So I thought we'd just run through the paints. If you have any questions, stop me and ask. I'll be interested to see at the end if there's things that you thought were one thing isn't what you thought at all. So I'm going to start with this end, the very, very popular paint. The Vallejo model color, right? So Vallejo model color is an acrylic paint, water-based, no smell. The white tops, as you can see, this is a white top, this is a black top. The white tops were formulated and built for brush painting. I airbrush with it all the time, using their thinner, and have no problem. So it does airbrush, but it's specifically formulated for people that use brushes, and you don't get it. It has a lot of self-leveling chemicals in it. It works really, really well. It has a nice drying time. It doesn't dry as you're trying to paint. So it's a great brush painting paint, and it has a great shelf life and is water-based, no smell.
What is the cost of a bottle compared to the cost of a Tamiya paint?
It's about the same.
$7, I think it is, from Brofdale.
They're like 3, 4.
Are they?
They're about 3 or 4.
$4?
Yeah, they're comparable in price.
Are they?
Full price to me.
Okay.
We'll get to the expensive ones later. Okay. I brought, this is their airbrush thinner, but it works really well with the white tops, right? And this is their airbrush flow improver. I don't hear many people having problems with flow with their airbrushes or with their brush painting. If you live in Arizona, believe it or not, it is really, really difficult to paint in hot, dry areas, right? The paint dries on your brush or dries in your airbrush coming out. So the flow improver, whenever you hear flow improver, think that it slows the drying time down. Allows the paint to flow better out of your airbrush, but also allows your paint to flow better on your model. So if you put a couple of drops of this in a palette with this paint, you've just lengthened the drying time, which really helps sometimes.
It doesn't dilute it.
No. No, it's almost like a gel. It's really weird, and you just need like the tip of a brush, right? I brought some paintbrushes just for the fun of it. Another thing that I found out on the internet, if anybody does do a lot of figure painting or a lot of brush painting in particular, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but this is called a wet palette. And what you wind up with is, in your wet palette, you wind up with a sponge and this paper. And the trick is, you soak the sponge, put it in here, you soak the paper, don't wring it out, put it in here, and then that's the palette for your acrylic paint. And what happens is, when the acrylic paint sits on here, it doesn't dry out. When it starts drying, it sucks the water out of your wet palette. So you'll have like a little drop of paint here, and you can go hours and it's still not dried up. So yeah, it really, really does a lot for someone that's doing a lot of brush painting. If you're the odd guy that every once in a while you gotta do a couple of dots on an instrument panel, You probably don't want to take this out and get ready. If you're doing figures.
Originally a wet, yeah, that's exactly. Originally a wet palette. Figure painters use a lot, especially using acrylics, because acrylics dry so quick, so it allows them to do things you could normally do with oils, like blending and stuff like that. So I originally bought one when I was doing minis, because I'd use the Vallejo for the minis. But if you want to like blend, like those sort of effects with oils, which I'm sure Jerry's going to talk about a little bit later, those things are great. Get them you can also get them at Michael's, which is a half price off coupon.
Yeah.
Add them if you want to make them yourself, which I know if there's a cheap will, there's a cheap way.
Just bring up
If you have a
a
sponge, parchment paper, like baking paper, you can use that on top as well.
Oh, by the way, Adam's lost his voice tonight, so we've already had all the
Really?
jokes. We've already had all the
Really?
jokes, so that's why
Now we believe in God.
it'll be like a
Should save it till Christmas, for God's sake.
Okay.
Okay.
Next, we're going to talk.
What do you think of the next fighter jet that Canada's going to buy? What do you think of the F-35 there, buddy?
This is the blacktops. Now, Vallejo, same paint really, but it's been chemically thinned and retarder added to work better out of an airbrush. So this is the same exact paint, really. It's just been sort of set up so it's right out of the bottle, right into the airbrush and spray, right? If you're frugal, you'd realize it's half a bottle of this thinned out, but I'm just saying that.
But there are colors, Jerry, there are colors that you can't get in the other, I think.
Yeah, in the brush
I
paint.
brush paint with it because it's really thin.
Yeah, you can use it for brush painting. And the other thing with the brushing one, it's a tricky formula to get the right mix of water and paint. And then to add, you're going to usually have to add something I use sometimes, to me, as acrylic thinner, as a thinner, just as a wetting agent for it as well, for the airbrushing one. But if you don't get it right, you just, all the surface tension for preparation, the roll isn't going to save you from going everywhere.
Okay. Next, we've got, so the guys in the back will recognize this stuff, Games Workshop paint. Guys, this is anything from Games Workshop, just put a $sign on it because it's very expensive. But I'm telling you, this paint, if you're brush painting, this paint is amazing for brush painting. I've never seen one easier to paint with than this stuff. They have very strange colors because the genre is really for anime and gaming, right? But to have like the basic white, black, red, yellow, blue in this, when you want to just do a little bit of touch-ups in a cockpit or whatever, I love this stuff. It's really, really good.
The worst shelf life of any paint.
Because of the pot design.
Well, because of the way it's designed, you'll see that might just be dried out.
Even their old bottles, which were different.
When you open it up,
Terrible.
you wind up, see the lid? See the lid?
Wow.
It's set up so you can just dab your brush in the lid, and it's pretty well thought out.
The only exception,
Like if you wanted to make orange, could you red and yellow?
Oh, yeah.
the only exception I find to the bad bottle rule, they make very good washes for their inks, and they seem to last a lot longer. I've had some inks for 7-8 years, and they're great.
Their chainmail silver apparently is quite
Their
good.
metallics are
Yeah,
excellent.
they got some amazing
Yeah.
paints. The next one, guy, is I've got Life Color here. Again, another pure acrylic paint, but you see them more with doing figures and doing washes and doing weathering and so they have like this one here, I think if I'm not mistaken, this is grease effect. It's amazing when you're doing anything around an engine, or let's say you're doing an airplane and you're on the landing gear and you put a little bit of this and you just put a couple of drops and drag it down. It's really neat. It really looks like there's grease coming out of the grease nibble. So this, and then you can get Life Color all the way to stuff like Larry gave me this the other day. But so this is the type of stuff that they sell, like stuff like this is the whole rust set for adding rust to models. So they really sort of generalize in that. Next one is Akai. I don't know how every time you hear someone talking about this paint, they say the name differently. This is a beautiful paint to paint with. Absolutely gorgeous. It's an acrylic paint. It has its own thinners if you want, but you don't really need it. You can just use X20A if you want. Got the wrong one, X20A. The problem with this paint is it's really, really hard to get. It's a Russian paint, so if you want Russian colors, they're amazing, but the only time you can't order it from Russia, they won't ship here, and so you have to order it from Greece, and the store in Greece is always sold out, so not recommended just because it's too hard to get. And then I just brought a bottle of this because I had one given to me with an airbrush or something, and it's just calm art. So all the way, like, you're using acrylics and that, you can go to, what's Hobby Lobby? Right? And this is their brand of paint, right? And they got like tons and tons of paint, dirt cheap. Like this is really cheap. Now, how much you want to trust this stuff on your $200 model? But I just want to mention it's another acrylic. Do we have some stuff back here? Yeah. Oh yeah, this is just a Vallejo airbrush thinner. Flow improver. I want to show you some other stuff that if you want flow improver, you don't have to buy the fancy named Vallejo. You can just go to any artist store and get the artist acrylic flow improver, right? They also have retarders, that same exact company. It slows the...
If Michael's doesn't have it, Curry's Art Supplies always seem to have them.
Yeah.
Bijon has a pen. Bijon.
Yeah. This is the matte. This is their varnish. I'm going to talk about that a little later when we talk about clears, coatings. Now, what is this? Okay. Next one is where we sort of drift off the road a bit here. This is the very famous, very popular Tamiya acrylic that's not so acrylic. So this is the Tamiya acrylic paint that has a warning, flammable warning on it. So acrylic, people think acrylic, that's water-based. Well, Tamiya and a lot of the Eastern countries believe it's the pigment. So the trick that they're playing here is they're saying the pigment in this is an acrylic pigment. The thinner for the paint is actually alcohol-based. Right? So I'm going to go over and go to a pure lacquer that everybody knows, Mr. Hobby. And the number one thinner in the world, for me, Mr. Color's self-leveling thinners. Right? Really strong, not really, lacquers. Let's just say lacquers. If your airbrush, if you've been using this stuff, and you have an atom of lacquer in your airbrush, and you put a pure acrylic, a real acrylic paint in it, you got glue, instantly. So if you ever have that problem where all of a sudden out of nowhere, your paint is like, you thought, well, I just thinned it, and it's thick, like and so you add more thinner, and the more thinner you put, the thicker it gets. That's what happens is, it is really hard to get every bit of a lacquer out of an airbrush without taking it apart and cleaning it to within an inch of its life. So be very careful if you're going to go back and forth from a lacquer to a true acrylic. Now, Tammy's acrylic loves lacquer thinner. In fact, you watch a lot of people, they won't use X20A is their thinner for their paint, but you'll see a lot of people using the lacquer thinner with their acrylic paint.
However, if you're going to do the hairspray method with Tamiya paint, don't use the lacquer thinner painting, use the acrylic.
Good
Because
point.
the acrylic will respond to the water, whereas the lacquer one won't.
Yeah. So what you've done, and you're right on, I forgot about mentioning that. What you've done is when you've added the lacquer thinner to the acrylic paint, you have now lacquer paint. You've turned it into a lacquer, right? Which is waterproof. So if you're using hairspray, you're now, okay, so we had sort of flipped there to Mr. Color, the paint I use pretty well all the time now. I love this paint because of the results. When you spray with this stuff, you don't even need, if you're using the combination of self-leveling thinners and Mr. Color, you don't need any clear coats. It's comes out gloss, and it winds up, if you give it time, like there's a little thing you have to know about it, is it will be dry to the touch within a half an hour, right? A day later, you go pick the model up and you'll be sitting looking at it, and you find your thumbprint in it. So what happens is the shell, because it's a very hard paint, the shell will dry, but it takes sometimes days for the paint to get fully cured, so you have to be very careful of it. But once it's cured, it is rock hard.
What happens if you heat it to dry it?
Yeah, that helps. That speeds it up, yeah.
It doesn't melt the plastic.
No.
It's a danger though if you use too much heat.
Yeah, but you can.
There's no need to heat the paint. If you put it on properly and you're patient and don't mess with it, as he says, it'll dry out. Heating may speed it up for what though? If you, and the next thing you know, where'd that antenna go?
It needs a Viagra for that.
And of course, now that we've gone to
Lacquers.
the lacquers paint, we have now the new paint from Tamiya that is a lacquer. It's a true lacquer paint, right? So they've just came out with the last 15. They said that when they first brought it out, they said they were going to bring out a line of 60 colors. And they brought them out 15 at a time, and the last 15 just is shipped now. So be in stores anytime now, I'd guess.
Yeah,
You know, in fact, no, Hobby and Toy,
they-
Wheels and Wings has
Are
that.
they copying the existing range or are they doing color specifics?
For what I'm seeing is they're replacing a lot of their rattle cans.
Yeah, they're basically, that was one of the key things, some of the first colors they came out with when they announced it. They're matching, the first colors were like matching the car colors out of the rattle cans, because for example, Tamiya had, if you wanted to do an F1 Ferrari, they didn't have a matching color in their bottles. You could only get it in the rattle can. The lacquer, one of the first colors they had.
Is for our rattle.
Now
Have you
they're
done for
doing-
the racing green?
I don't know, I'm not
but
sure.
I can let you know.
Yeah. I got a Lotus.
I have it. I have 2 bottles of British Racing Green, by the way, and yellow. British. But anyways, we'll get to that shortly. Right there.
One observation with Mr. Color Silver, which I use for my natural metal finishes, is if you thin it with Mr. Leveling Thinner, it doesn't give as smooth a surface, like a job, as if you thin it with Mr. Color Thinner, the non-leveling variety. For whatever reason, there's something in the leveling thinner that just, silver pigments are so fine, all you need is just the slightest nudge of the molecules, and you're gonna lose that,
Yeah,
pristine silver.
because that reflection comes from all the molecules
Right.
lining up and
And for whatever reason, and it's just the regular silver enamel, it's not, I don't know about the metallics, but
have you ever tried it with,
I used it with that as well.
It's
That-
funny
No
you should
problem,
say
right?
that because Neo Tokyo just got into Mr. Color thinner for metallizers.
Really?
They say it's
Yeah, I bet you it's probably the regular thinner,
Mm-hmm.
because it's weird.
It's in a
because-
red bottle, right? So that's all I can tell you.
okay, I'm just gonna do a little sidestep here and mention things like Steinlrez, which is it's from Badger, and it's a undercoat primer, right? A lot of people are using Steinlrez and love it. I bought it, I won't use it, because I won't use it and I won't use the Vallejo primers because they have rubber in them Not really, but let's just say that because it makes it easy to explain how it works. So they've got something in the paint on their that has like a rubbery consistency until it dries.
It's like latex paint.
Yeah, it's like a latex there, good, right? So it does an amazing job. When you spray it on, it does an amazing job of leveling, getting rid of little minor flaws in that. It's just very smooth. But if you go to sand it, it has a tendency to want to ball, right? And so that happened to me once. I said never again. But it's great stuff. Like if you're spraying stuff and you know you're not going to have to go and sand it or do any work after it, like you're pretty sure that your model is perfect, which mine aren't yet when I first spray them. So yeah, but this is really getting to be a very popular product.
That's awesome because you can literally just spray and put up.
And spray.
This red is actually one of Vallejo's primers.
Yeah. My Defiant Night Fighter I did last year in all black. That was the I believe it was either the Vallejo or the Styrene's black because it was a nice matte. It just works. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go with the Mr. Color one, which is very popular, right? So you got Mr. Surfacer 500, right? But this line goes all the way up to Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500. This comes in gray, white, and black now.
And mahogany.
And mahogany, right. Sorry, I forgot about that. And this is, for me, this is what I use for a primer. Because I know that it's harsh enough to dig into the plastic, right? I've seen a lot, I've had it myself, but I've seen a lot of people go to do some detail work and put masking tape down on their kit with a pure acrylic down, and when they lift the masking tape, it all come off right down to the plastic in one sheet. So this stuff here, once you get it on and it's dry, it's part of the model.
But it does come with a cap.
Yeah.
It stinks to high heaven.
Oh yeah.
It's nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Well-ventilated room. Well-ventilated room.
Very. Okay, so now I'm going to go and move over and talk about the metallic colors, right? And you've got True Blue, Alclad 2 lacquers, right? Now, of all the lacquers, this is, like when I say this is not really a strong lacquer, not when you compare it to Alclad. Alclad's an amazing metallizer. I really recommend if anybody's going to use it, to use the black base, because that really helps with the reflectivity of the metal, makes it look a lot more metallic. And you have to put thin coats. Thin coat, let it dry, thin coat, let it dry, thin coat, never flood it. And it's weird because as soon as you flood it, it looks like it's, I don't know, it's just like some modern art object. Like it gets really, at different rates, and just all the flake, I guess, or the metallic. In it gets all, so it's ruined. So the other problem is it doesn't have much of a life. If you're going to be handling that part of your model, let's say a P51 Mustang that you're doing bare metal, and you use this stuff, it's gonna, after you've picked it up 100 times, right? You'll see that you're done in plastic 5 times. You'll be back down to player plastic. There's something that I was supposed to bring tonight that I forgot.
Is that the Alclad Aquagloss?
The Aquagloss. They came out with the Aquagloss, and it's amazing because people, like your normal reaction to stuff that is easily wears through and comes off in your hands is to cover it with a gloss, right? To protect it. But when you cover Alclad with a gloss, it changes. It doesn't look metallic any longer. But yeah. But if you use this aquagloss, it does a very nice job. It keeps, I'd say, 90% of the look. Not all of it, but 90% of the look, and it protects your model. You now have a model you can handle.
It's an absolutely awesome.
Yeah. They're selling it like crazy. So we'll go across, and this is the Mr. Color metallizers, right? Now, Mr. Color metallizers, I love them. They spray well. They brush. That's the nice thing about this is very brushable. You can brush it on with no problem. It self-levels, but it's a buffable metallizer, right? So for people that have never used buffables, when you put it on, it looks kind of strange. Well, you look at this. This is iron. And if you looked at it, you look at it, it looks almost black, and you go, it doesn't look like iron. And when you put it on, it's really dark. And you go, and it's not really metallic looking. When it's dry, you take your finger and just go, and it instantly turns into metal. It's amazing. But of course, because it buffs, it has the same problem with wearing right out. First of all, you'll go right down to the plastic if you work on it, if you touch it too often. Secondly, it gets everywhere. So you touch it, then you touch your model, and now you've got a metallic thumbprint on your model. Now you've got problems because it is not an acrylic, right? So it's dug in. So
Cover that after. Can you cover that afterwards?
aquagloss. Use the aquagloss. It works on it too. Like the aquagloss is like a miracle to metallics. Here is, I don't know if any people have ever seen this. This is AK's True Metal. They came out with this, and a year later they came out with this. I would say they came out with that because this was a total failure in some ways. But it is really neat because it's a wax. As you can, it smells. You know what it smells like? Sorry guys, it's going to be all over the place now because it's spilled out. Fuck. So, there, I got some on me. Yeah, it's very metallic, but it smells exactly like shoe polish. And there, I got it. As you can see what came out, right? Now, what's happened, what really got people turned off of it, is they found people leaving it in their, in England especially, most people have like little, what do they call them in England, Duncan? They have like little sheds, like they don't.
Summer house sheds.
Summer house. So anyways, they build themselves a little shed in the back, and they do modeling there, not in the house with the wife and the. Look at that. Look what this stuff is like. Anyways, I wish I hadn't done that now. But this is a wax, so it does an amazing job. But it never truly hardens as far as I'm concerned. And what was happening was, this stuff for some reason was expanding and unrolling this and coming out the end. So it'd be, you go to open your drawer and there'd be like a half a tube of this in your drawer, so. Now.
They come from ancient Rome.
Now this is AK's Extreme Metal. This is probably the best metallic I've ever used. It is amazing. It is better than this as far as I'm concerned. Oh, I don't know. Yeah? Anyways, if you're going to use this, you need to get their cleaner as a thinner if you want to thin it. Or just, like you're not supposed to need to thin it, but if you want to thin it, don't thin it with anything else. It doesn't like it. Something on the pigments it just doesn't like. Now,
Tried any of the Vallejo metallics?
yes, and I'm trying to remember what I tried.
They're metallic.
Yeah.
Just the label reminds me of the paint.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't impressed by
I
the,
just like them for ease of airbrushing. They just come out and they look.
yeah, I didn't like the metallic finish it left.
Okay.
Like, you know, as far as really looking at metal.
They're silver to me.
Oh, their silver is amazing. Their bottle of is good.
Still like the 9 bottles for silver.
The what?
For silver, like doing spinners and that sort of thing. I still like those little dime, used to be dime, now they're about $3. Bottles of,
Testers? Okay. Next, I'm going to go into the very, very strong paint. As far as I'm concerned, this is called Gravity Colors. It's from the States. It's copied along in England. In Europe, it's called Zero Paint, right? Which was a car paint company that was going up on really hard times. And one of their friends was a modeler. And said, you know, your quarts and half gallons of paint, you could put them in little bottles, right? And sell them for the same price as your thing, right? And the guy went, oh, come on, you gotta be kidding. So anyways, they started producing the proper paint for cars. So if you got a model of, like, you know, well, I think I got one of them here. So this is the Prairie Red. This is one of the colors, I have all of them, but the 3 of them, but this is the colors for the Red Bull racing team, right? So you can, oh, by the way, sorry. So that became really popular. Of course, it's trouble getting it across from England to Canada. They don't want to ship because they had too many shipments returned to them.
Yep.
So an American company started up their own little business. Same exact idea. It's car paint, so don't forget it's car paint. It is strong. Like this stuff makes Mr. Color seem like
so you can go to
acrylic.
a body shop and refills.
Yeah, you could if you want, but it's really nice paint. Works really, really well. Very, very strong.
The American, one of the differences, the American comes with a plastic bottle and the British is glass or something.
Could be.
They're both glass.
And the nice thing they do sell is, this is their clear. And it's 2-part, right? 2-pack, they call it. So it's a 2-pack clear. So it's a true clear, right? When you spray this on and it hardens, the only way to get it through is you're gonna have to sand your way through it. It's that hard. Amazing. Quick drying. When it's dry because it doesn't dry from the outside in like all these other paints. It has a hardener that chemically dries it, so the whole coat dries at once. Well, not instantly, but when it dries, it's dry. So, very good to know about Gravity if you're building cars and you want to build any cars that are like, especially the modern ones, right? The come out in kits. They have the right colors for Mercedes, for you name it, they have the color for it.
What's the risk of it melting the kit?
None. Like I've used it a couple times now. No problem.
A lot of popular car guys who have channels and they swear by it now. Just absolutely swear by it.
Yeah, it's nice paint. Not cheap. That is expensive, but you're getting it, you're paying American dollar, you gotta ship it in, so it's not a cheap thing. Then I just brought some testers and some Humbrol to talk about enamel. Now, Tinlets, I love them. But this is, to any of the newer guys, this is what paint used to be, right? And then everybody got away from enamel because of the smell and all the problems with it, and they went to the water-based because they didn't have any more smell. It wasn't dangerous. Now they've been slowly but surely coming back towards the lacquer side, right? Now, we haven't really heard much about enamel except that Megamo said that Alclad was going to put out a full line of Alclad enamel paint. I haven't seen it yet, but they talked about it. So we may see enamel come back. Who knows?
Well, and Forbes Hobbies in Cambridge has Tamiya now.
Yeah.
Yeah?
But yes, but there aren't very many shops that will carry it because they don't sell. Testers is just everywhere, so. And models.
One of the best things about the Humbrol is the color range.
Yeah.
They've got over 200 different colors, and you can mix them. I sometimes have trouble getting exact colors trying to mix the Tamiya. But with Humbrol, you can get dead on. Like I've got the FS brochure, the color brochure for the U.S. government, and I can pretty well match just about any color using a Humbrol. It might take a little while, but
Okay.
It's interesting how many different paint lines now there are, like we were just talking before, like.
Hataka
you
is
know,
new.
Those of you going, went to Delta this year, how many different paint lines do you see that we just don't get here?
Mission model,
So many different
Hataka.
types.
Hataka? Yeah.
Hataka. It's the one from Europe that's really popular over there now.
Well, Riverville has their own line, Mission
Riverville.
Models has Mission Models. There's even rumors apparently Humbrol is talking about reissuing a whole new formula acrylic line.
Well, they have some
Humbrol's.
like an extra color type model.
Did they have some there? Okay, I've been waiting to get some news on that, so.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be, again, something that's only.
By the way, people actually use this to clean their airbrushes and thin paint.
Yep.
What?
Acetone.
It also
Yeah, now you're in the,
Yeah, the car painters now also use an airbrush and nail paint.
I was going to bring some nail polish and I forgot to.
And
But-
use nail paint.
I had a guest on the
Cars.
podcast, and we were talking cars, and that was one of the things that came up.
Wow.
They use the nails, they'll go to the dollar store.
We
and buy the
used to have
brightest,
a
gaudiest
member.
color.
Sorry. We used to have a member years ago who was a dentist, and he swore by that stuff for smoothing down the joints after you put in putty.
I use it for that.
Yeah. I've got a
I actually take
Filling without
super
sanding.
putty,
Yeah.
I put it in a jar, and I use real acetone.
Yeah, real.
That stuff, but I melt it into soup,
Devicus,
and then I just
big
paint it in.
Devicus, that was the guy.
It's awesome.
And you have no melting problems once it mixed with that. Okay.
Sorry, Terry, do you have MRP up there?
No, I left it at home. I have some. That was the other company I was trying to think
That's the
of.
one out in the United States that is making some noise. There's
Yeah.
a lot of modelers who are moving towards MRP that
Yeah.
they really like it. They clean it, it's a really nice paint to work with.
Yeah, they say it's a beautiful paint, but it's another one of these paints where you don't need thinning. You just out of the bottle, into the airbrush, on the model. MRP. Yeah. I don't know how I missed it, but I have a bunch.
I think a lot of it too, and you said this too, it comes down to your own personal style and preference.
Yeah.
If you're a rivet counter, you want that exact color, you may be looking at
Yeah.
one type. If you want something like, my wife has asthma, so even with a spray booth and that, I try and keep clear of the really harsh stuff. And that's fine for me. But it's nice that we have so much choice now.
Either that or you send her to her sister's for the weekend.
That would be me out in the shed then, yeah.
So, and I brought these collections here to show you. What you said is dead on, Stuart. Sometimes what brings you to the paint is the subject or the colors that you're trying to get. So I went and bought a bunch of this Megamo acrylic because they have full Russian sets. So they have a lot of colors that are really, really hard to find. Like the interior greens, like true interior greens. Like these are the blues and that for the SU-33. So this is a color set just for the SU-33. So you can, so I'm back into acrylic paint. You get stuff like this if you're into figure painting, right? So this Vallejo, well, AK Interactive, which was part of Vallejo at one time, right, has a whole set here. Flesh and skin colors, right? So they have all the tones all the way down. So this one set, you're all set. For any figure painting, any faces you need to do a pilot's face or whatever, so.
And the other thing you'll find is a lot of the manufacturers, particularly Vallejo, AK and that, they'll also have, not only on the box, they'll have a guide. Go to their website. They have huge download sections with PDFs of like how-tos, techniques, you know, really amazing. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there you can take advantage of.
And then, of course, Meg is also coming out now with all the Gundam colors, right? So another thing like to know, it was very hard to get specific colors. I think Mr. Color's starting to come out with more specifics for Gundam.
Well, they have had a Gundam color specific line for quite a while. There's about 15 colors. Of course, there's more than 15 colors in Gundam.
Yeah.
But it's,
So
it's a huge market. People forget.
they have like,
Yeah, about
Ammo has
buy Gundams.
they have a set of paint for just weapons.
Yeah.
Bombs and missiles, right? They got, so it is on and on and on. So it does, if you're looking for something like that, like I wanted to start getting a little better at putting some figures into cockpits and that, so I wanted to get a little better at painting faces. So they did. Speak of a lost friend, or a lost, but a missing friend is a certain arm figure on top of a tank that looked like my dog had. Big pokey-eyed eyes and
Looking like 2,000 yards away, and the guy's right in front of him.
so I want to learn more, but it's nice you can just get one kit and all the colors you're going to need for your flesh, like light, medium, dark, whatever. But a few other things to show you that you may not know about. If you're using acrylics with that paintbrush, you should have this. It is amazing. It's called the Master's Brush Cleaner and Preserver, right? It's cheap. You get, this is the big one. You can get a little one about that big. And all you do is so you use your brush, you rinse it off in water, you clean it, right? Then you just take some water on your brush and you just rub it in here, rub it on your skin, clean it off. A little water, and you'll see that you think your brush is clean. When you start running it in here, you see how it is little bits of paint colors, right? That comes out of what I thought was a clean brush. At the end, when you're finally done with it, you just repoint your tip and leave this stuff on it, because it's a preservative and it's cheap.
And it lasts forever. I've had one jar for 15 years.
Okay, you have to clean the brush off with that on it before you use it for another time. Clean the brush.
Yeah, you don't have to. No, you don't have to, because I've forgotten a couple times. But it just keeps humidity. It just keeps the humidity in your brush, in the hair in your brush, and
I think it was like $6, $7 when I got it.
yeah. So if you're using a tester's brush,
It'll last you for 30 years. Yeah, it'll last you 30 years.
This is good stuff.
You can put it in your will.
and this is if another company that does it, as Tamiya has a brush conditioner.
So this is for like horsehair brushes.
No, any brush. Believe it or not, any brush. Nylon, yeah. It just puts humidity back in the brush, into the hairs, right? And helps them stay. So but this is the easier one, because it really cleans your brush.
Where do you get that?
At one of the arts, Curry's. But I think every art store has it.
It's
Yeah.
not much, and again, it will last you literally a lifetime.
Unless you forget to put the top back on.
Unless you put the top back on, yeah.
And then you come back a day later.
You can also order it from Amazon.
There you go. Okay, 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, just quickly, I brought this because this is the clear of choice for a lot of people.
The great bone of contention.
Yeah. I've heard people that have used it their whole life on hundreds and hundreds of models and swear they have never had one problem with it. It doesn't yellow, it doesn't have any, it's perfect. And I've heard other stories where people say it's very dangerous if you use this.
Never put that over Tamiya's. It will crack.
Hmm?
I don't know why.
I've done it for years. And it hasn't
Never had the problem.
I've got one color.
Mike Hill introduced it to me.
I know it's weird, but
It's there. That's Tammy's. I fucking,
Gloss, you put it on gloss. And
I missed a bunch.
crack and crack. That's what you're talking about.
I put it on gloss testers, and no problem. Really? I use it as an airbrush thinner, no problem. And the second goes on
Makes no sense.
So I just want to end you off with clear coats. X22 mixed with this stuff is amazing, but you can use X28 too if you want. But a really good clear, guys. Like, you can't complain. You can get there if you don't have an airbrush. If you're doing model painting with a brush, regular brush, and you want to do clear, right? You can get these rattle cans of Mr. Mr. Super Clear, and they have the matte, semi-gloss or satin, and the gloss. They work really, really well, but they are a lacquer. So again, if you don't like the smell in your house, stay away from this stuff.
The Vallejo, they make
So-
this satin I've used.
And you can just go to the exact same store, go back to your art store, and you can get the matte UV varnish, which is a clear coat that's got UV protection, everything you want for your model.
So we'll get sunburn.
And again, dirt cheap, you can buy big bottles of it.
Plastic ring, plain.
Spray
They now
or brush, either.
You now have
Nothing, just put it on.
clear with UV protection.
Have you ever used the Vallejo? They have a satin and a clear coat. Like, yeah, it's quite good as well. I get a low.
Even their Vallejo glass is nice, but I find it very flat.
First sniff is
Flat
fine. I should have had the camera on him all night.
By the way, guys, I brought these out. They have nothing to do with paint. Well, they just sort of do. I bought these a little while ago, and I tell you, this is the solution to all your tape needs. These things, there's 4 of them in the set. This is the most important one, the A, Infinity. And what you do is you just take your tape, you lay your tape on here, then you put your blade in here, and you can cut from 0.4 mil thickness up, right? Nice and straight line. So if you want pin striping, you just, away you go. They've got ones if you want to make circles. If you want to do all kinds of checkerboards, they got ones like this for making arcs with all the different radiuses. And they got this one. And you can just take tape, put tape on it, and then just follow the valleys.
We're about done.
Okay. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Gerry.